It was 2014 when Derek and Maria Broaddus moved into their dream home in Westfield, New Jersey. The house at 657 Boulevard was everything they had hoped for. Big, beautiful, and perfect for their family. But soon, their excitement turned to fear. Just days after moving in, they received a letter from someone who called themselves the Watcher. The letter was strange. At first, it sounded friendly and welcoming, but then the tone changed. The Watcher claimed they had been watching the house for decades and were tasked with keeping an eye on it. The letter asked if the Broaddus children had been brought to them. It mentioned how the house called to the writer. Derek was shocked. Who was this person? Why were they writing these letters? Derek immediately went to the police. He handed over the letter and hoped the authorities could help. But they just told Derek to stay cautious. And more letters kept coming, each one more disturbing than the last. The Watcher seemed to know details about the Broaddus family. They mentioned the children's names. This was obviously a huge problem. You are even more frightened once you know someone is watching your kids. They asked about their daily routines. The letters described the house's layout and its rooms. The Watcher even knew where the children played. They seemed to know everything about the family. On the other hand, the family was clueless. They had no idea who this mysterious writer might be, and they started to feel desperate. The Broaddus family was terrified. Who was watching them? How did the writer know so much? The letters seemed to be a warning. The Watcher asked strange, cryptic questions. They said the house had been watched by generations of watchers. The letters spoke about the history of 657 Boulevard. The Watcher claimed their father and grandfather had also watched the house. Derek and Maria started to feel trapped. Their dream home had turned into a nightmare. They were being watched, but didn't know who was watching them. They tried to find out. They threw a garden party and made the guests sign themselves into the guest book, but none of the handwriting resembled the Watcher's. One night, Derek watched all the windows on the street with his binoculars, hoping to catch the Watcher in the act. That is because in one of the letters, the Watcher said that they might be watching from one of the windows on the street. However, not only was Derek unsuccessful, he was also laughed at. He received a letter saying, "I watched you watching. Binoculars and telescopes are brilliant inventions." The once beautiful house now felt unsafe. They were afraid to let their children outside. They installed cameras, but no one was caught on film. Neighbors were questioned. Some seemed suspicious, but no one was charged. The police could find no solid leads, no fingerprints, no suspects, and the Watcher was nowhere to be found. The Broaddus family began receiving threats in the letters, and the tone grew angrier. The Watcher didn't like the changes they were making to the house. They warned that something terrible could happen. Maybe a car accident, one letter hinted. Maybe a fire. The Watcher's obsession with the house was chilling. They spoke as if the house had a life of its own. The letters said that the house wanted something. The writer seemed to believe they had a deep connection with it. It was as if they were protecting it from something. Derek and Maria tried to live normally, but their fear was constant. They felt like prisoners in their own house. They couldn't sleep at night, and they wondered who was out there. They couldn't understand why this was happening to them. Understandably, they decided not to move in. Instead, they rented the house /each one. Eventually, they decided to sell it. But the letters had become public. Word spread around town, and buyers were scared off. Nobody wanted to live in a home with such a creepy story. The Watcher's letters had ruined their dream. In one of the last letters, the Watcher wrote, "The house is mine now." It was a final, eerie message. The Watcher seemed to have won. Despite the police investigation and the family's efforts, the stalker was never caught. They could still be out there, watching, waiting.